Hi everyone, and welcome to day 4 of the Practice With Me series. I'm going to be picking up right where I left off. We actually were at the third movement of Debussy's A Stomp. On the Google Drive, I actually listed that the next thing was Image Book 1, but I've decided to take that out because I've basically worked through that before, and I'm trying to do all of these pieces on this series from scratch. So that actually skips right over to the Revel section. I've also studied Judo just a little bit, not enough to really qualify a real learn. So I am going to go to that one, which I believe is at the beginning of this book, and then go to Gaspard du la Nuit, which I've looked a little bit at the first movement, but none at the second or third. So I hope to get at least those today. There will be a little break in the middle of this because I have a piano lesson to teach. But other than that, let's go. So Judo, E major. I think these are best. Most people couldn't stretch these, so there's no point to try at a perfect legato. But I think it still makes sense to kind of do like as if you're doing them in one hand position. So 1, 2, 4, 5. Pencil's already breaking. There, it's better. And then 1, 2, 3, 5. So on this bigger one, I don't know why I would switch it. Oh, I think I would do 3 on the C sharp simply because the D sharp was before. So it's like naturally then the 4 doesn't have to move in, even though that would be a fingering that works. Then the figure is repeated. Then we have 2, 4. Ooh. Yeah, I mean basically I would just keep this all in 4s. 1, 2, 4, 5. Maybe just 1, 2, 3, 5 on the G sharp, just to provide variety. 4, 5, 2, 3, 5, and then from here on, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, something like that. And that takes care of the first 3 measures. Then left hand we've got, I would get groups of 2, so 5, 2, 4, 1 on all of this. Here you have no option but to repeat the second finger. Like 1, 2, 5, 2. Sorry, 2, 1, 5, 2. Same thing. Now in the 2, 4 measure, the third note, I would do 5, 2 on B, E, and then 3, 1 on E, B. That's because I don't like having the hand feel like it's stiff. Like if it's 5, 3, then the 3 is played twice. Whereas if it's 5, 2, 3, 1, the repeated note E changes fingers. So you get a little bit more control, and then the arm will naturally glide along with that. So I'm just going to write change finger there. Same thing for the next measure. 5, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1 at the top, and then just a roll. And then flip the hand over and do the same thing. Ending on 5, 2. So there we go. Let's see. Obviously very broken up. I'm just sort of working through it. In terms of pedaling, I've heard this done a lot of different ways. Revel just simply says 2 pedals at the beginning. We don't know when to clear or anything. I don't think he wanted it all. I haven't cleared yet. There is actually kind of something nice about that. I would love for somebody to dare try that idea. Because as a classicist, I'm used to pedaling all the time and everything being super clean, but this is quite literally a water piece. It's about being undulated and drowning in water, and the context is a river god basically laughing. The translation of the poem. So maybe we want that sort of just color that's not so clean. I think this piece is usually sounds like a technical exercise. You know, not that bad, but that idea where it's just very mechanical. Maybe that's not the case. So I'm just going to put in question for a later session to look at pedal length. Maybe erring on the longer side than usual. And with that, I'm going to go to Ondine, which again, I've looked a lot at this first movement, really not in terms of practice, but just fingering. So I've already decided that I'm going to actually change this up a bit and talk about the technique of this. The challenge is, of course, repeating the entire chord. If it weren't for that, if it was just chord back and forth with single note, I don't think that would be too difficult, but there's something about going to it and then repeating the chord that's hard. I think what would help with that is two different wrist angles. So if the wrist is kind of low on the first one and slightly higher on the second one, that would probably help. But also that idea with the finger itself, so how far you're extending versus how far you're bringing it in. It's the difference of having like pancake fingers or making a fist. That would of course be the full range of motion that the fingers could do. You know, like flap like that or closed in. But I think if you bring it kind of flat and a little bit more closed on the repeat, then it actually kind of helps get the clarity without causing the arm to lock up and jam. Because you don't want to have the hand set and then have to repeat that twice. First of all, it's going to sound heavier. Second of all, you'll feel tight. And third, you will never get the speed that you need. So I think a lot of the key to this is just these little nudges of finger height and wrist height. How much, I'm not exactly sure. But I'm going to try a couple things here. So I'm also looking for group length, because you got this weird rhythm of chord, single, chord, chord, and then inverted, single, chord, chord, single. Just sort of this weird pattern. So maybe just the chord, and then everything to the next single, and then back to the chord. So like play one note and then use the next four as a pickup. And then even that, it's more of a group of 8. So I'm trying to find a circular movement in the wrist so it's always in motion. I think it's probably like start, if the wrist is a clock, and this part is, when it's up it's 12, here it's 9, here it's 6, here it's 3. It might look mirrored in the camera, but I'm actually moving counterclockwise right now with the wrist. And it's almost like, it's hard to figure out. I think I have to start somewhere around 6 o'clock. 6, 3, 12, 9. If I'm thinking about every 2 notes. So 6, 3, 12, 9, 6. And then every 8 notes is a full circle of the wrist. Add to that this idea of the finger grabbing and you get something like this. As you're playing it. Da, 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 da. That could change. But I'll often write these clock times. I just write like the number of the time of the clock and then like a little dash. You could make your own system, but I try to be very aware of like this clock analogy in my wrists at all times, because basically you're always working on that plane of flexibility. Are you under more at the 6 hour, over more at the 12 hour, or more to the right or more to the left? Or I guess I could say outward of the body and inward toward the body, and whether or not you're moving clockwise or counterclockwise, that's not always the point, but you just want to be aware of what feels comfortable relative to the notes you're playing. So I'm going to say 6, 3, 12, 9 every 2 notes. And just, I would probably have to practice that for several days and see how that feels, but I'm just going to go very slowly. 6, 3, 12, 9, 6, 3, 12, 9, 6, 3, 12, 9. So this is actually very difficult because the left hand is, when you play it that slowly, it's hard to even hear the connection. And you get so focused on the right hand, it's hard to hear or pay attention to the left hand at all and get the right fingerings. I do something simple. 1, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1. Actually didn't write all of that in, but I think it's for the most part obvious. So 8 notes for a full circle. And then again. And then this time with 1 left hand note added. And then one more time with 2 left hand notes. And then 8. Something like that. So I think that's the difficulty of this piece, is 8 note groups is the wrist motion. How are we on time? Might have time to look at one more movement. So we're gonna go to Le Guibé. Perhaps it's Le Gibé. I actually should know that, but I don't. The second movement. Very slow, he says, and we open with right hand octaves. I'm assuming that's to re-articulate. It looks like a tie because it's the same note. And I've always heard it played like this, but this is really weird. It's a music notation thing. The bottom is tied and there's no articulation. The top is also tied individually and there's a staccato. So that would indicate to play that twice. But I'm almost wondering if the bottom was supposed to be held while the top is repeated. Like, nobody plays it like that, so I'd have to double check my music notation rules to see, like, have people been reading that wrong. It's not likely. I'm sure I'm the one missing something here with a million recordings of this piece, but I still find it interesting. I've actually never really looked at this score as to how it sounds relative to how we hear it. So for now, play it twice. And then we go to a single note. I'd probably do the third finger. Maybe the fourth finger. I wouldn't keep pinky. It's such a weak finger, so when you have only a single note, it makes sense to do a different finger. You want full control. And then left hand comes in with 5, 2, 1. And that's pretty simple. That's just basically all that's going on right now. There's this ostinato figure that comes in, and that dedicates or dictates everything else around it. It's sort of the main playing field. I think the main thing is evenness. I'm gonna write that in the score. Evenness of that sound. You don't want a lot of, not too much shaping. There's like these little stresses, but I think it's more like they're all like at the same level. There's just this sort of breathy quality to it. And this I know even less of the French than the last one. Sans presser ni ralentir, jusqu'à la fin. Without something slowing down until the end. I'm guessing without pressing ahead, but instead slowing down. So almost this idea like the piece fades away, but I really have to double check that. So I'll make a note of that. He does say very slow with très lent. And sortine durant toute la pièce. So mutes, I'm guessing, during the entirety of the piece. The mutes would be, I'm assuming he's referring to the una corda pedal, which is the left one. Or just maybe the idea of a mute, meaning like very restrained in all of this. All of this text is something to read up on. So I'm just going to make a note of that. Let's see. We'll do a couple more measures of this. We've got, you fill in with the F for the middle of the hand, third finger. And then what is it? Un peu marqué. A little bit marked. I'm guessing what he's saying is that it should be voiced, or it should come out. What's unclear is it the left hand? Is it the middle of the right hand? Like we've got the F, which could go then to the D flat. Oh wait, how does that work? It's C flat, isn't it? Yeah, or is he talking about the left hand? And then if it's the left hand, which voice of the left hand? The whole thing? As a unit? Or just the top like we would normally do? So there's another great interpretation question. And ultimately, I think we all need to form our own interpretation. But this is something where I would actually use several recordings as a reference. Most of the time, I ignore what recordings do, because it's like, why am I playing this piece if I'm just going to use an idea somebody else used? At the same time, if we're truly lost and there's no other indication on the score, sometimes it's just good to see if you like really relate to somebody else's opinion. So in that case, I would listen to where the voicing is in at least 6 or 7 different recordings. I don't want to just throw on the 2 most famous and be like, oh, it's one or the other. That's not really enough information, because if like 5 out of 7 people are doing it one way, that kind of indicates a standard that you probably want to follow. Maybe not. Maybe you want to be different. That's fine, if you have a good reason to be. So anyway, where to voice, or I should say what to voice, or whatever. So we'll leave that one there for now, and let's try and find. Oh, is it that short? Is it like 2 pages or something? No, it's 4. Okay, so Scarbo. I've never even tried to sight read this, so. I would probably do 5-4-1. Maybe 3-2-1 gives you more control. But they're also heavier fingers, and you're playing pianissimo. It's always a dilemma, because 5-4-1's really sketchy to start on. And he's saying diminuendo, so actually 3-2-1 I think I like more, because that was too much. But the 3 gives you a little bit of accent, which gives you more room to come down. So that would be my recommendation. And then what is this? What even key are we in? I guess B, but like not real. Oh, a G sharp minor. Okay. Got to double thumb that bottom note. So we've got that, and then you have all these repeated notes. I always change finger on repeated notes. I think I've seen people like do thumb, and that to me, like the thought of that is, I already like my hand's hurting. Just imagining doing that. Very something en tremolo. I don't know what fondue is. Fondue. But actually I have no guess. So sordine is, I'm pretty sure muted. Moderate speed, muted, and tremulo. I mean, definitely has this idea of like... I don't think he really wants... I think he wants something a little bit more wispy, is my guess. Man, that's not... My fingers are cold, too. I'm just not feeling it today. I don't know, I was trying 4, 3, 2, 1 groups, but it's just not working right now. Like, I can do it in the right hand. The left hand is frozen. Well, let me see. I wouldn't be opposed to even playing the left hand chord. Or wait, the left hand, using the left hand for the chord and the right hand, the repeat hands. Sometimes I do stuff like that. Like, there's no reason not to, except for how it's written. But you have to imagine if you're not being seen performing and somebody's just listening, they wouldn't know the difference. So one teacher I had said, no, be faithful to the score. Always do exactly how it's written. You know, Beethoven's notorious for this. Filtering in figurations in a way that just is really difficult to do. Like Opus 2 number 1. Like, I barely got it. Most people just play one note in the left, 2 notes in the right. And you can go a lot faster. But then most people, some are purists and are like, no, you have to play it as written. Others are like, hey, it doesn't matter. If it sounds good, do whatever you need to do. So maybe that's the solution, is just simply do it with the right hand. Then what is this chord? Oh, it's just, why is it so hard to read with a C double sharp? Like, he could have written D natural. I don't understand. It's weird. Anyway, it's just an E dominant 7th and 4-3 position. But I'm going to say maybe flip hands. And I don't know, that's for you to decide if you're learning this. So either way, I would do groups of 4 in the right hand or 2, 1 in the left hand. So like 2, just simply 2 notes at a time. Let's see. Oh, I don't like that either. I feel like I might be able to get it if it's not winter and my hand's a little more warmed up and I had been practicing it. It's one of those hard things to know, because some things you can't tell if the fingering's going to work until you have it at almost full tempo, but you can't get it to almost full tempo until you practice it for 2 hours. So it's sometimes, unfortunately, you have to change your fingering all the way when you get that far in and realize, like, it just won't get any faster. And I've done everything I know how to do technically to improve it, and it's not happening. I don't know there, but that might be the case. And then exactly the same. You can't do it. And we'll go to that fermata. He does the diminuendo. I also might do a pedal trick there. A pedal, pedal, pedal. Like, change on each one. See, because then you get 3 distinct levels of sound. And changing the pedal gives you more control. So 3 levels of sound. It's interesting that the chord is an accent. You usually hear something like this, but it's like, it's an accent in the context of pianissimo that's already gotten quieter. Maybe it's just simply a da. It doesn't have to be da. You know, to me, there's no indication to really come up there. I think maybe just. Kind of like the piece is totally unsure of where it's going. Maybe, perhaps. perhaps. And that saves the drama for the bigger crescendo and when you have this thing, whatever this is. This is a nightmare to read. Whatever that is. I have to look at how many beats. Just something to consider. So, I'll leave that one there, and let's go over to Rachmaninoff, B flat minor sonata. I'm doing the 1931 edition. So, we have right, left, right. Right hand for 4 notes. Left hand for 4 notes, just a B flat minor. And then 3-2 in the right hand. Pretty simple. 5-3-2-1 chord 3-2. 5-3-2. And that looks to be. It's actually very unclear how long that's supposed to be. They're in eighth notes, but they're small, and it's too many eighth notes for 4/4 anyway. So it doesn't seem to reflect a beat. Usually you hear it as fast as possible. But I actually wonder if maybe he wanted a little bit more, a little more power behind it. He says velocity, right from that doesn't start on the fortissimo. It actually starts on the run in my edition. So that could mean speed. It could mean power. Maybe he wants it more stretched out. I don't think that we should just use the recordings we have in our ears to determine that decision, because it's equally convincing to go something like that and really make a moment out of it, and then use the material there to get in time. It's also very interesting to me he has no dynamic marking until that low fortissimo. I wouldn't interpret that to say we could then play quiet, but because that would sound weird. But I think it means we don't have to give everything on the first note, Maybe something like that. Just some things to consider. So I'm gonna make these observations. No dynamics. Of course, we wrote in the fingering, and then I'm gonna write tempo ? Often I don't want to settle these questions on day one. I would have to learn it, practice it, and play it for a month and mess around and see what I'm thinking before I make that decision. So, dun dun. Now another thing where I would change on the same note. So the B flat in the middle, I would go 2 and 3. Just because if you do 2-2, it's impossible. That's 1-2-5 for that last octave. Very hard. And if you do 3-3, then 1-3-5 on the first one is very awkward. So don't think of it as a bad thing to change fingers, even if it's the same note. Most of the time, that's what you want. And then the left hand, I would just do wrist height, like we mentioned in the Ondine. I would just go like low wrist, medium wrist, or even less. Just as long as there's some change and you go a little bit like backwards, forwards toward the fall board, that will feel better technically than like playing it the same way twice. So, forgetting that one's bad. Well, I'm back from break, which is actually a different day because there was an unexpected knock at the door, which is why I braked last time. Anyway, back to the second movement of Rachmaninoff Sonata. We have the top line here, non-allegro, not too fast, espresso, espressivo, maybe I need an espresso to wake up, which is very expressive, and mezzo forte. So a healthy level of loudness, not over the top, but not withheld in any way. And I think it's the left hand harmony here that gives us support for the melody, but it's not that it should be quite loud. So I think if you have really good balance, you can afford to play the melody basically at a forte level and then play the harmony at even one level under, like mezzo piano, and then they average out to essentially a mezzo forte level. So this is something I think is often misunderstood about a dynamic marking. Too much of the time I hear students say something like, oh, it's mezzo forte, and then so everything is just sort of a plain sound. And then like everything is muddled. What do you really want me to hear? So my effort is to always like figure out what the texture is and play around that dynamic level with different levels. So it would be more like this. So I can really push that melody if my left hand is a little bit more out of the way. So I'm writing top line soaring and just basic balance issues. Nothing too unusual here to be aware of. So at the same time, you have a note to hold in the right hand. So we're now looking at fingering. I would start off 1-4, and naturally that leads to 5, which goes to 4, 2, 3. I mean, if we just take the simplest approach, I don't really see any other way of doing that. Now we have to consider, though, what do we use on that A, because we go under it to G after. So I say 2 has to land on the A. And it's already repeated. You cannot hold the bottom voice because it's the same note as the melody that comes after it. So I would say 1-4 on the arrival. Oh, actually. Yeah, so 3 on the first E, 4 on the second E, switch to 2. And then fill in with thumb on G. Or do I want 3? No. I was just gonna say, sometimes you can actually do a crossover fingering, so then thumb on A, 2 on G, which would give you like 2 and 3 on G and B. The only advantage to that, even though that is more spread and harder to play, is you can then physically connect to F sharp and C much smoother. And that was even without pedal at the end there. But a piece like this is going to get really twisted and full of knots if you try to connect too much. So I think it's fine to let go and just keep your foot more active. Pedal everything that's stepwise with a fresh pedal so you don't get a blend, but you still get the color and the legato. And just create it as much as you can from the fingertip. So 1 on G, 3 on B, and then use the B to hold. The thumb will have to move to the F sharp. There's no other way of doing it. Actually, there's a little trick. I think I made a video about this. I might have taken it down from years ago, where the thumb will play on a white key like this, and then you can slide to play on this part of the hand on the white key. So like what I just did is like if my hand is the key, I go like that, and I'm still playing the white key with almost like the palm part, and then this finger can now legato connect. See, I have no pedal here, and I'm gonna go thumb thumb with absolutely a seamless break. Maybe more work than it's worth, but when you have the time in a slow movement, it's perfectly acceptable. So no pedal here. There was no pedal, and that was thumb thumb. So that's also a possibility, but it's okay to just lift and play it again too if your pedaling is really good. So yeah, actually this does get kind of hairy, so I think I'll just do those 2 measures for now. 5, 2, 1. Left hand at the beginning. Then we go 3, 1, which naturally just connects the C sharp down to the C. And then he does a slur off 4, 2 on B, D. So you don't even have to worry about connecting to the next part. If you wanted to, though, you could swing the thumb under and get 5, 1, and then finger substitute the A. I think that's harder than it has to be. would just restart with 2-1 so that the 2 can go down to 3. And then once again you have to restart because he goes to C and G. That's too. You can't do that with the 4th and 5th finger. Yeah, it's just too much going on. So you have to lift a lot, which again makes, I'm gonna say, clean and fast pedaling is such a big deal in this piece. So 1-2 on the A, switch to 3, let go, restart with, since you're gonna let go anyway, I would actually just do 4-1 on the CG, and then 2-1, 5-2, and then switch 2-1. I'm already way farther than I went with the right hand, but that gives you some idea of how to kind of keep this seamless thing going. Then the E will connect down to D sharp. The bottom of the hand lifts, but the D sharp can swing under with thumb and connect. Just getting 1-2 on D, C sharp. And you can swing that to the octave as well. And there it is. Alright, so a couple things. Fast pedaling, good balance, as connected of a fingering as you can, but not so much so that it's going to tie your hand in knots. Lift when it's convenient. So then we have this recap of the second movement right before the third starts, and we have Allegro molto. He opens with triplets, dun 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 dun. 2 groups in the right hand and then a group in the left hand, and this is it's F, sorry. Oh, it's just like the opening of the first movement. I never actually caught that until I looked at the pitches. So okay, here's an interesting debate. It's 5 notes. You could easily do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Very likely that's what Rachmaninoff intended. And then left hand doing 1, 2, 3. Because there's just this natural flow all the way down the hand. But when it's this clear and this high, this loud, this accented and all that, you need all this power. He actually writes accents on the first 3 notes. And if you think about the hand, it's 5, 4, 3. Now 3's got a lot of power. But 5 does not, and 4 has even less. So trying to come in and like, you'd have to like jam the hand basically, or use a ton of fingertip to just pull really quickly in. I'm going to move this down just a little bit so that you can see my hand. You'd have to use the fingertip really digging in. I think that's more work than it's worth, especially because you're starting on the offbeat. Da 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 da. It's not da 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 da. You can't just like begin right away. So my recommendation is to use a short fingering, 2 groups of smaller fingers, like 2-1, 3-2-1, or dun 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 dun. Because if you start with 5-4, you're just always gonna be, it's gonna get you technically in the wrong mindset. You're gonna like probably brace the hand and be less likely to really get it. Also, it's not that it's even that hard. I mean, I could do that really quickly with 2 groups, but naturally the more power you're trying to get, the more you're gonna like need time. So using that fingering kind of complicates it intentionally in order to give yourself the expressive power to, you do not have to begin this movement right in time. I mean, nobody does that usually. It's kind of stretching it. I think that's also part of the accents, not just louder, but to me an accent mark is different in some way, or isolated in some way, or brought attention to in some way. So that can include rhythmic stretching. So more of a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then we're in time. So whatever it is, I need to figure this out real quick. So fingering that, there's that, and then left hand chord. Okay, it was just written weird. It's a E fully diminished 7. So, I mean, I guess we're in the key of... Yeah, we're back in B flat. So, that's what we call the 7, 6, 5, first inversion of 5. And then, of course, just your bass F octave. So, you start with both hands on F. And then you have that harmonic moment of clash. So all the more reason to really hear that time of the chromaticism and the harmonic clash. You know, that right there. Now we have... This edition says 4 notes plus 2 notes in terms of the hand division. But I kind of like 3, 3. Sorry, I can't turn iMessage off. But anyway, if you can hear those dings. So 3, 3, and 4. Not that we really want that super accented thing, but I think it organizes the rhythm a little bit better. Oh, I know why it does it. It's the exact same shape. It's 4 notes, and then the right hand has that exact same 4 notes in 16th notes. So actually, I would do it that way. I like that organization. In which case, left hand can be thumb 2 or 2, 3. Either one. Both right hand groups start on 4. So right, 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 left, left, right, 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 right. And then here's a case where I would just let go. I mean, you can't connect that anyway. So the biggest thing is to get your thumb from G to D as quickly as possible. So use the G as a spring off. Almost imagine you're flicking the hand to the chord. And that's how you can get really quickly. Kind of tough there, but not absurdly hard. So here we go. There's the choreography. In terms of pedaling, there's always a debate here of like written notation versus just the effect of the music, right? So written notation is the bottom bass note is just simply a quarter note. That would suggest it shouldn't last longer than that. So then clear the pedal on beat 2. And then the chord is not held into beat 1, so then clear the pedal on beat 1 of the next measure. But by that logic, technically nothing is held, so why would we use pedal at all, right? Like, then we just get all these arpeggios as separate. And he doesn't want that either. We know he wouldn't want something that dry. That just doesn't sound very good. So if we're already distorting the exact notation by adding pedal, then the argument is how much is reasonable. I think we should try the extremes on both ends. So one extreme is no pedal at all, like I just did, or because then, you know, nothing is held. The general rule is that whatever the longest value is in another layer, that has to be held over shorter things. So we would know for sure to pedal arpeggios if there was like a whole note bass chord under it. Then it's like, well, that has to be held, so the composer understands that will influence what's above it. But when they're purely alone, there's nothing that has to be held. So then the pedaling is our choice. Considering, though, that it's all one harmony, I think you could almost get away with pedaling 2 measures in one, no break, because it's basically all one chord, a diminished 7th with an E flat added for tension. So, like, there, that wasn't even. I haven't practiced it enough yet, but all that, just kind of let your ears get acclimated to that. I'll try to do it one more time. I think that's perfectly acceptable. I could also see the bass note and then a clean chord and then pedal only from the chords. Again, it's good to just kind of sit in there for a minute and decide, do you really like that sound for this piece in this moment? I think either is okay, and I'm not really just decided, so I'm going to write for sure pedal on the F, hold all the way to the B flat chord until you change, and then I'm going to put a change on the diminished seventh chord in parentheses to say maybe I want to go here and here. And so let's see. I almost have it. Okay, so let's try it again. Now with the whole pedal. Yeah, again, I think both could work. So that was a lot for 2 measures of an arpeggio. But music made at a high level has a lot of details and thought behind it. So here we go. Switching gears, Prokofiev's Second Piano Concerto. Just a little bit here. Let's figure out this left-hand trap. We start in 12/8, which is really just like 4/4. There's 4 beats, but in triplets. I mean, that's how I would think of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, obviously, there will be this pedal. This is like haze. I've always listened to this concerto and imagined just like a sort of a hazy, cloudy atmosphere, and off somewhere in the hills you have this kind of like this piper or something, just something very ominous without a lot of deep or meaningful emotion behind it yet. It's more just sort of setting the stage. Maybe it strikes other people a different way, but I would go 5/2 and thumb. Use your thumb to flip over. So what I don't want to see, if I were teaching this, is something like the first 2 notes and break off and move. It shouldn't sound scalloped even without the pedal like this. That should never be. You should get it as smooth as you can without pedal first. And there's 2 tricks to that. One is that I'm physically rotating over the thumb. See how I can actually bring the pinky right under where the thumb is? And then I can swing the 2 over. That's one trick, which works on the way up. Now going down, you'd have to twist the elbow all the way out, which is not good, because then you have to bring it all the way back in to play the next position. So you don't want this. Now that's perfectly legato, but totally impractical for what I'm doing. Not reasonable. It's okay to let go, but if you notice, when I let go, I put a little length to it. See, I don't go da-da. It's da-da, 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 da-da. As if you're breathing through it. Da, and then cutting it off, but not da, just stopping the air altogether. So a little bit of length, and I'll just put a little break on those 5 notes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then use this to move on. Da, 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 da. Now notice 2 things. On the 3rd and 4th note, the 3rd and 5th note, the pinky goes from G to A. The 2 is still on D in both cases, but the pinky is moving. So I'm going to write a line from those 2 pitches to show that the position of 2 and 5 has to narrow in to da 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 to get that. And then going down, the thumb is on G and goes to A. So the thumb stretch between here and there has to actually widen. So while you have G and D in the bottom part of the hand, the thumb spreads out. So to a small degree, this is about expansion and contraction of the hand. On your 3rd and 5th note, you contract the hand. But on the 6th and 8th note, you're expanding the hand. It's something that I think a lot of people would do subconsciously after enough trial and error. But being aware of this can save a lot of practice time and save the hand from being stiff or missing the notes if you're not realizing how they're working. It's like you have one note as a hinge and the other finger is moving independent of that hinge. And the only way to do that is to just simply practice expanding and contracting the hand, or one individual finger at a time, kind of a thing. In the first case, it's the pinky moving. In the second case, it's the thumb moving. And sometimes you expand between the second and third finger, or the ring and the middle finger. All of these are possible. In this case, it's just thumb and pinky. So I wrote in my score, expand and contract the hand. And then again, sort of this breathy thing. Quality. I'm going to write haze and sort of pasty. I don't know if that's the right word, but for some reason that's what's coming to me. Now on top of that, I would definitely use the una corda pedal, the left pedal. Not for the sound, or not for the quietness, but just for the sound quality. I want it sort of this special, just layer of sound. Almost like strings, really. I think this needs to sound as little like piano as possible. It almost is orchestra. I could see this being just simply cellos. It's very Debussy-like. You know, if we just sort of change the tonality a little bit, you could hear that. And then on top of that, the melody should be very, not thin, clear, but thin in the sense of like not like a violin that's going and really leaning into the sound and expanding it, but more the precision of like finding the heat of the sound right on impact. Da, 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 and not like letting it bloom. I think it's more, there's a sharpness, there's a prickliness to it, but not harsh, just simply precise. He uses the word narrante. I think it's safe to assume that's just narrative, right? So speaking. And I wrote the word ping here in the sound. So we get this sort of very top, balanced, very much to the pinky, light thumb. So yeah, I think that's a good place to pause for today, and we'll pick up at the second movement tomorrow. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon. If you're interested in piano lessons, links to my contact information, as well as this Patreon account, are provided in the description below. I look forward to putting out more content in the near future.